Welcome to Candidates of Liberty, a special series from Lions of Liberty dedicated to spotlighting libertarian candidates across the country. If you enjoy our work, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another edition of Candidates of Liberty. And today I am here with the Libertarian candidate for the governorship of Kansas. I am pleased to welcome Mr. Jeff Caldwell. Jeff, are you ready to roar?
Roar!
Yeah, all right. That was a good one, Jeff. And before we get really too much into why exactly you're running for governor, why don't we just start off with finding out a little bit more about how you first became a libertarian? Why are you involved with the Libertarian Party?
Sure. So I actually am a former Democrat, which is kind of rare, I guess, within the Libertarian Party. So I've always believed in civil liberties, bringing the troops home. I discovered the medical benefits of cannabis starting in high school, so on the internet. And so I've always been like the left ideology of the Libertarian Party. And then 2008 happened, the crisis, the economic crisis. And then I discovered Ron Paul, and that's when I discovered Austrian free market economics, Peter Schiff, Tom Woods, Judge Napolitano, and all of the crew behind the scenes that we learn about as we delve deeper into the Libertarian Party. So once I discovered the economics part of libertarian ideology, that's when I started to become more aware of why it's important to get the government out of our lives economically. So, I actually was on the Obama train until September of 2008. And there was a watch party that my friend hosted at his house with his parents early on in his college career. And he asked me to come over to watch the forum. And it was an Obama thing. It was a Democratic thing through a local community college. So after that was over, I actually showed up to the watch party with Thomas Jefferson quotes saying we need a revolution every 20 years and, all these revolutionary quotes that our founding fathers have in the books. After I gave my speech of why we need to abolish the Patriot Act, bring the troops home, legalize cannabis, all that fun stuff, one of my best friends' mom's like, hey, everyone needs to go home and research all the candidates who are on the ballot or still running to make sure that they are aware of all of the stances of all of the people. So that was the time that I went home and I started researching Ron Paul. And, the very first video that I saw was him saying if Obama was for change, he would legalize all drugs, bring the troops home, and in the Patriot Act. I'm like, I can't believe that this Republican guy is standing up there saying these things.
Right.
So that's when I became aware of the entire libertarian ideology. But in 2010, I live in the 3rd district, congressional district in Kansas. And so in 2010, there was a 3rd District coordinator for Libertarian Party of Kansas who decided to run for Congress, United States Congress, and she was not able to maintain her position within the Libertarian Party of Kansas. So one of my friends came up to me and said, hey, Jeff, you should volunteer to take over the position. So starting in 2010, that's when I became an executive member within the Libertarian Party of Kansas, and that's when my political aspirations started to occur. And I've run for office multiple times. I've participated in being a volunteer for multiple campaigns. So, that's kind of how it started, and that's where I am today.
All right, so as has happened with many people, Ron Paul kind of blew your mind open and let you realize that there are more options out there, more different ways to think than that simple Republican-Democrat paradigm. And as you mentioned, you've been involved in the Libertarian Party. You ran for office several times. So why right now did you decide to run for governor of Kansas? What made you realize this would be a good time to run for that high level of a position?
So I've been very outspoken about the corruption found within the two-party system and how Topeka does not represent the average Kansan. It was kind of interesting to me when multiple people from outside of the political spectrum came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to vote for you in November for governor of Kansas." Or, "There's nobody representing me on the ballot running currently. I want you to put your name in the hat and run for governor of Kansas." So um, there were dozens of people that came up to me and said this. And they were people that surprised me. They were people that I didn't realize were paying attention to the things that I was saying. So that's when I gave credence to their request. And that's when I decided to put together a campaign team, which was actually very easy to do. There was a handful of people that came together to create our core group of volunteers, and we put together a website, launched our bank account, and filed to run. So it was very simple, and it was the demand of the people. So I decided to put my hat in the ring.
Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your race specifically? Who are your opponents, and how are you kind of able to get your name out there and get the Libertarian Party name out there in a race where, as almost every race across the nation, it's most of the attention is on a Republican and a Democrat?
Yeah, so there's actually 5 candidates on the ballot for governor of Kansas this November. There's me, there's the Republican Chris Kobach, there's the Democrat Laura Kelly, and then we have 2 independents. One is Rick Cluse, and the other is Greg Orman. So there's a lot of people that are competing for votes this cycle. And the Republican, I'm sure a lot of people know who Chris Kobach is. He helped form the infrastructure of deportation of illegal immigrants at the federal level, help prevent Muslims from coming over to our country. And I mean, he actually created the stop and frisk bill in Arizona. So he's well renowned nationwide. He appears on Fox a lot. And Laura Kelly's been a career politician. She's been in Topeka for a very long time. I think it's about 14 years. So she's been up there for a while. Rick Cluse is a pastor. He's a disenfranchised Republican, and so he doesn't embrace all of the aspects of the Libertarian Party. And then Greg Orman is a former Republican and a former Democrat, and now an independent. He ran for Senate as an independent candidate in 2014. He's very wealthy, so he's very connected with the business industry. So he also has liberal ideology as well. I am the only candidate on the ballot that actually is running to fully legalize cannabis. None of the Democrats or the independents believe in that. I will be the only candidate that is pushing to pardon all nonviolent cannabis offenses. So I am able to bring the issues from the left and the right together. I want to cut government spending responsibly. I want to cut taxes. I want to abolish the tax on food and water. I want to lower private property tax. And then I want to start abolishing the income tax, but I want to focus on people that have lower paying jobs. And one idea that I have is the tax-free tips. So let's abolish the income tax on servers and waiters. And then as we responsibly cut government spending, I would like to work in abolishing the income tax completely in Kansas. But as I keep saying, we need to cut government responsibly, because what Brownback did, my predecessor, if I am elected, he actually cut taxes first and then started to cut government spending afterward. And the legislators actually did not come up with a budget that would balance with the amount of taxes that were cut. So it needs to be done in reverse, just how Peter Schiff says. He's like, you can't cut taxes without cutting government spending first. That's the most responsible way of doing it. We need to create a surplus of revenue for the incentive to cut taxes. Now, the state of Kansas is $3.2 billion in debt, so we need to cut spending fast. And I don't think any of my opponents are even talking about the state of Kansas being $3.2 billion in debt. But we're getting our message out there through social media. I have merchandise that has cannabis leaves on it. We have merchandise that has a Statue of Liberty holding an AR-15 style rifle. And we have the traditional campaign stuff too. So you can have your option out of 3 different types of merchandise that you can choose from. But we had a post that reached about 500,000 Kansans on 420 because of the cannabis leaves being on my merchandise. So, we are reaching Kansans. I've reached about 1.5 million Kansans so far on Facebook this cycle. So our name's getting out there. We do need a lot more money in order to reach people with the traditional methods of advertisement, but the best way for our campaign to reach most people is through social media and the internet. So that's been very friendly to us, and we will continue to use that avenue. As the election rolls along, more and more media outlets are reaching out to us, and we are filling out tons of surveys. So not only are we using the social media aspect, but we actually are filling out the surveys that we receive in the mail as well. Don't skip the surveys; those are super important. So we're plugging along, man.
And as you mentioned, I think that is an example I've heard often of the state of Kansas, where they cut taxes, and then a lot of people will say, well, look at Kansas, they cut taxes, it was a disaster. And as you pointed out, when you just cut taxes and you keep spending like there's no tomorrow, it's not going to be a good result. So how are you connecting with people sort of on the campaign trail about that issue? Are you able to kind of point them in that direction and saying, look, it's not the tax cuts themselves that are bad, it's the fact that we're just cutting taxes and still spending as if the taxes, were never cut at all?
Well, actually, I don't really talk about it like that, because they will connect me to Brownback 2.0, which people don't want at all. So what I do is I talk about how the government subsidizes businesses. So right now there's actually a company in Wichita, Kansas, that receives checks in the mail to hire people. Then they turn around and fire people, and then they receive another check in the mail, like millions of dollars, to hire more people and fire more people. So that's an example of the cronyism that's going on in Topeka that I want to abolish. I talk about the secret backdoor deals that influence the way politicians vote through pork barrel spending. So the pet projects that wind up being in the politicians' back doors. People are very receptive of cutting the cronyism and the pork barrel spending. So I talk about responsibly cutting government spending first. I also talk about turning the drug issue into a medical issue instead of a criminal issue. And that resonates as well, because that would free up resources within our prison industrial complex to allow for more violent criminals to be arrested, and we would have less innocent people locked away. So people resonate with certain issues instead of just trying to push the blanket statements. I try to use specifics. And people really resonate with the message of cutting spending responsibly and then cutting taxes. So they get it. And one of the questions that they ask is, well, how are you going to make up for the tax revenue lost if you abolish the tax on food and water? And then that's when I start talking about how we have to cut government spending. So that's how it goes. And, I actually participated in a forum a couple weeks ago, and I actually said that the same policies that Brownback implemented at the state level of Kansas is being implemented at the federal level right now, where we've seen a big tax cut for corporations and wealthy individuals, but yet they keep increasing government spending. So the economic outcome of what's going on at the federal level is going to be a disaster.
Well, Jeff, as you know, libertarians are often very opinionated on many things. I'm curious, since you've been involved in the Libertarian Party all this time here, it sounds like almost a decade or so, are there any libertarian positions or viewpoints that you don't know if you're fully on board with, or anything that you question party-wise, or anything that you might diverge from?
You know, I think that we need, as a party, to try and be as receptive to the public as possible. So I can understand like the radicalism. I get it. However, I am a pragmatic libertarian who believes in implementation without having repercussions. So I think that we need to have more of a viewpoint where we implement freedom over the course of time, which is what the communists and socialists have done to our country, is slowly implement their ideology incrementally over the course of time. We need to incrementally reverse it. So I think, the branding in terms of our message, the deliverance of our message, I think needs to be a little cleaner from certain aspects of the factions within the Libertarian Party. I would like to see more of a positive receptance of the libertarian message. So, I'm not going to say that I would support, the Bill Weld message, but I think that we need to look at specific issues to move forward on and tackle them instead of using your broad blanket statements. Because when I take the I Side With quiz, I actually score like a 96 or 98% with the Libertarian Party. So I agree with pretty much everything that the platform stands for. But I think that we need to work specifically on certain issues and tackle things from an individual liberty standpoint, and moving the needle forward instead of trying to be all or nothing.
So it sounds like your main divergence from a lot of libertarians is more kind of strategic and messaging, more so than disagreement on the principles themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I agree with the libertarian principles.
All right, Jeff. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit more about your campaign. Before I let you go, why don't you let everybody out there know how they can find out more about your campaign, how they can help out, maybe toss in some bucks.
Sweet. So my website is caldwellforkansas.com. That's CaldwellForkansas.com. And my Facebook page is, just type in Jeff Caldwell, II, because I am the second. And then my Twitter handle is Caldwell for Kansas, and that's FORKAS.
Jeff Caldwell, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on, taking the time to tell us a little bit more about your campaign. I wish you the best of luck. Keep up the great work. Keep on roaring.
Thank you very much, man. Have a great day.
All right, gang. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jeff Caldwell, running for the governorship of Kansas as a libertarian, one of the many great candidates of liberty we've had the chance to interview here on this program, known as Candidates of Liberty, one of what is now currently 4 shows you can find on the Lions of Liberty network here. Just got to hit that subscribe button and you'll get it all. You'll get me, Marc Clair, every single Monday, conducting interviews with leaders in the libertarian movement, as well as fun roundtable discussions in the form of libertarians in living rooms drinking liquor. You'll also get Brian McWilliams every single Wednesday when he hits you upside the head with his sometimes vulgar dose of comedy, culture, and liberty on Electric Liberty Land. And of course, John Odermatt wraps things up every Friday with his hard-hitting look at the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday. And of course, as you know, because you're listening, we also have this Candidates of Liberty spin-off program that we've been very excited to bring you. You can actually find the archive now. If you miss any of these shows, we have a very special archive page for Candidates of Liberty that you can find over at lionsofliberty.com/candidates. And a very special announcement, because we have been so inundated with requests for interviews for this program, and there are just so many great candidates out there, and of course, we're still not going to be able to get to even a tiny percentage of all the great libertarian candidates running for office across the country, but we're going to do our best to get a few more in, and because of that, starting this week, starting 2 days from now, this show is going to be twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays through the end of October. Of course, most of these elections, the votes are going to be held on November 6th, so we'll be winding down, and then the fate of this particular segment on Lions of Liberty will be TBD, but if you do enjoy the work that we're doing, if you enjoy all our shows and want even more content, head on over to our Patreon over at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. For as little as $5 a month, you can join the Lions of Liberty Pride, help support our program, help us grow the show, and get access to tons of exclusive bonus audio and video content. We've got the Degenerate Gamblers weekly program, the Conspiracy Corner, a monthly dive into all sorts of conspiracies, as well as the League of Liberty podcast, which I do every month or so with our good friends Roger Paxton of the Lava Flow podcast, Chris Spangle of We Are Libertarians, and Johnny Adams of Blast Off with Johnny Rocket and Raylene Lightheart. All great programs you should be checking out. You can hear all of that and so much more bonus content by heading over to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Tune in for Brian on Electric Liberty Land tomorrow. And of course, like I mentioned, another edition of Candidates of Liberty this coming Thursday. Until next time, live long and live free, kids.